Okay, Year 10. So I'm here with another lesson on another poem, and to help you fill out the home learning sheets that Miss Christie sent you for last week and this week. So this is lesson 6 of 15, and today we're looking at Letters from Yorkshire by Dooley. So as always, can you please make sure that you've got your poetry knowledge organiser in front of you, that you've got one of the sheets sent by Miss Christie either ready to type into or to handwrite on. And of course, in this lesson you will need your anthology if you've got it, and also turn to the page where Letters from Yorkshire is annotated, and I think most of us should have this poem annotated. So today we're going to start as we would in a normal lesson with a little knowledge retrieval task. So these are key techniques that are used by Dooley within the poem, and I just want you to see how many of these you can define. So I've got what is enjambment, how would you refer to a 3-line stanza, what is pathetic fallacy, what is a stark juxtaposition, and what is symbolism. Okay, so if you would like to pause the video there for me, please. Okay, give yourself 5 minutes, and then we'll go on to green pen those answers on the next slide. Okay, Year 10, so if you want to get a green pen out, please, as always, can you make sure that if you got the correct answer, you give yourself a tick using your green pen, and if you didn't get the correct answer, please do make sure that you do jot down what the correct answer should have been, so you've got that to refer back to. So number 1, what was enjambment? Well, enjambment is where one line of poetry runs into the next without pause. A 3-line stanza is of course a tercet. Pathetic fallacy is where the writer uses the weather to set the mood or tone of a text or a piece of literature. A stark juxtaposition is a severe or big contrast. And symbolism, of course critical to almost everything we do in literature, is where a writer uses an object or word to represent a much deeper hidden meaning. So as always, give yourself a mark out of 5. As I said, make sure any that you got incorrect, you've got the correct answer wrote down. And let's get started on with today's poem and today's lesson then. So, summary of the poem. So we're, again, a reminder, we're looking at Dooley's Letters from Yorkshire. So, the speaker of the poem describes how her and her friend from the countryside write letters to each other. The speaker lives and works in the city. She questions if her life is less worthy as she does not have a rural lifestyle anymore. The speaker seems nostalgic, and there are suggestions she longs for life in the countryside. However, the central idea in the poem and the main message in the poem, and we're going to look at messages next, is that their friendship and relationship is maintained despite the physical distance. So there may be a significant distance between them, but by communicating they are able to sustain and maintain their friendship. The relationships described seems to be a platonic friendship, so it's not ever explicitly said what type of relationship is described in this poem, but it seems to be a platonic one. It doesn't seem to be a romantic relationship, and it doesn't necessarily seem to be a family relationship. So we can see that it is almost is certainly a platonic friendship. So if you would just like to pause the video just here, and then if you can complete box 1, that would be fabulous. Okay, so as I said, we're going to come straight on to the wider messages and ideas in the poem. Now, one of the critical things and the main point of this video really is to drum home what Dooley was trying to achieve, because it's very hard to understand this poem if you don't understand those critical messages and ideas. So, Dooley reminds the reader that friendships and relationships can survive and remain strong despite physical distance. Dooley is highlighting that love and friendship can overcome the icy miles. You can have a relationship or a friendship where there is a significant distance between you that is painful, but your souls can still be connected if you communicate. And the poem again emphasises therefore the idea that communication is central to friendship, and that you can't have a friendship or a relationship without communication. Additionally, the poem also explores the relationships and connections that we have with places. And so the speaker in this poem seems to have a longing for the countryside, a longing for that rural life that she's left behind. But we see how those relationships and the relationships we do have with places actually shape and influence us. Okay then, year 10. So we should now have our summary of the poem, and we should also have our wider messages and ideas. So we're now moving on to Admissible Quotations. Now I have picked out just 3 quotations from this poem which I want us to focus at and look at in detail. Now we have all already annotated the poem in our anthology, and we know there are other quotations that there are important things we can say about. But for today's lesson and for your summary sheet, I'm just going to focus us on 3 key quotations that I think really are central to the poem. So the first one is "His knuckles singing." And this is talking about how the speaker, the speaker's friend who she's writing to, when he goes inside from digging and sewing, when he goes inside to reply to her, that his knuckles are singing. And I think in the most basic terms, this conveys how the writing of the letters makes the man in the countryside very happy. And I think it conveys this idea that friendship brings us happiness in our lives. But I think there's actually so much more we can say about those positive connotations of singing. They seem to, as I said, reflect the happiness that the communication is bringing them, which therefore seems to make this suggestion that if you don't have this communication, then your friendships can't survive, they can't be meaningful. But it could also convey the speaker's belief that the man she is writing to has a more harmonious life, that his life is perhaps more unified and joyous because he is digging and sewing, and we know she is feeding words into what she describes as a blank screen. And we have this idea that she's perhaps a little bit unfulfilled with her life in the countryside. So then it brings us back to this idea that does she believe his life is better? Does she believe his life is more harmonious? That his letter will be more tuneful because he lives in the countryside? And that almost as well reflects her relationship with the countryside, that she longs for that rural life that she has left behind. Okay, then moving on to our second quote. Now this quote comes from the last stanza, and it's pouring air and light into an envelope. Now, I think this is such an important quote because it says a lot about what the friendship brings and the importance of that friendship. Now we've got the word pouring. Now if you pour something, that suggests a significant amount of something. And I think that is really important, that what she gains from this relationship, what she gains from those letters is significant and vast. That the benefits of this friendship, and in fact the benefits of communicating in any friendship, perhaps Dooley is reminding us, are bountiful, and that basically friendship itself has bountiful, it will pour joy into our lives. Now of course the light seems to be symbolic. It seems to convey hope and joy that the relationship brings to the speaker. It may be that these connections that she has with this man in the countryside help her to see hope and help her to see light in her life in the city, which we know she seems to find to be unfulfilling. But more significant even than light, I think air also seems to have some symbolic significance here. It could show how the relationship nourishes her. Maybe it allows her to breathe. Maybe this air is like fresh air, that it takes her away from the sort of maybe polluted or busy air of the city. Maybe the air, literally the relationship, allows her to pause, and writing these letters is a moment of solitude away from the busyness of her life. And it also seems, I think, to show this physical relationship that the speaker is maintaining with the countryside and that rural lifestyle, because it is almost as though she's literally physically getting that physical connection to the countryside through this communication. Now, I've made a typo there, that should say 3 of 3. Now, as I said, I'm only going to look at 3 quotes in detail in this lesson, but please note that these are just some of the quotes you can use and analyse about this poem, and that you should have the full poem annotated in your anthology. Now, I love this quote, and this is the last quote in the poem, and I think is absolutely the most important. And it's this idea that our souls tap out messages across the icy miles. Now, of course, the inclusive pronoun is used, and that seems to reflect the unity of their friendship. It shows and emphasises their physical connection despite the distance that is between them. And the idea that the messages are tapped out suggests a harmony to their relationship. It conveys excitement. If something's tapped, it perhaps is like a dance. It's almost as though it conveys this excitement that at their communication. It conveys an eagerness to write these letters. And it could illustrate the joy again that this friendship is bringing to them. Now, but of course, the most significant part of the poem, the most significant line of all in the poem, is the idea that they can cross the icy miles. Their communication can overcome the distance. Their communication can break down this cold friendship and make it warm and loving again. And the icy miles are a metaphor for the distance that is between them. The distance that is between her and the city and him in the countryside. And on one level, talking about them as icy almost reflects the speaker's desire to be closer to the countryside and closer to the person to who she is writing to. It could be on one level suggesting that it may seem like the distance in their relationship makes their relationship cold, as the connotations of icy obviously suggest it is difficult and harsh, maybe that the relationship is chilled by the distance. But equally, the melancholy tone in the poem is starkly juxtaposed by the more upbeat message of the poem, and this idea that despite the pain and difficulty of distance, a truly loving friendship can overcome these icy miles, and you can still have your connection with people and to a place despite that distance. So, as I said, they of course aren't the only 3 poems that are significant, and the only 3 quotes that are significant in the poem, but they are definitely 3 of the most important. And if you would just like to pause the video, perhaps go back a little bit and make sure you are completing the Unmissable Quotations section there. Now, moving on to structure and form then. Okay, so I've made some points, a couple of points here about what we can comment on the structure and form of the poem. Well, the frequent enjambment that is used in the poem, so the frequent use of where one line runs into another without punctuation or pause, could have been used to symbolise how their friendship and relationship is easily able to overcome the distance where they communicate, and it remains strong despite the distance between them, and that's of course really significant. Then we come on to this idea that the poem is written in free verse. Now, I think it's really significant that there is no fixed rhythm or rhyme in the poem, as it adds to the conversational, informal tone of their communication. And this is in part not what you'd expect from a poem about letters, perhaps, but it seems to convey the naturalness and closeness of their friendship despite the icy miles and the physical distance that are between them. Now, the poem is structured in 5 stanzas, all of which we know are tercets. Now, a tercet is an unbalanced stanza, and I thought about why is it in tercets. One interpretation that I hadn't thought of before was that it could symbolise how the distance in their relationship makes their friendship somewhat unbalanced, but it doesn't break the consistency of their love and stability in their friendship, as the tercets are maintained all the way through. Okay, year 10, so if you just want to pause the video, and then you need to just complete the structure and form box just there, and then we'll move on to our final box. Okay, so our final box then, what would we compare this poem with? What would we choose to compare letters from Yorkshire to in our comparative essay? Well, that actually for this poem would depend upon the question, and I've put a couple of scenarios here. So if it was about the theme of distance, you may choose Mother Any Distance and explore how relationships can be loving despite physical distance, or you may choose Eden Rock and you may explore how in this poem the speaker can't overcome the physical distance in their relationship and he just has a desperation to join them, because of course the afterlife is perhaps not contactable in the same way a different place in the country is. But then say for instance you were given the theme of nostalgia or memories. You may choose to compare it to Before You Were Mine or Climbing My Grandfather and explore the importance of open and honest communication and how they build for true friendships and true bonds in relationships. Okay, so hopefully now you've got your full sheet completed for Letters from Yorkshire, and also hopefully you've had a few more extra ideas that you may want to add into your anthology from when we annotated that in class. Okay, thank you.